glasses. It's not going to work. Good evening. To all the Guvnors attending tonight and to those unable to attend, thank you all for the hard work that you've put in this past year, especially the contributions you've all made towards the fundraising. Without your help, the Guvnors Club would be unable to support the charities that it does throughout the last year. Now, this is only the third time I've attended this event. The first time, some of you may recall Jim Broadley's brilliant reply. I think that some people were unable to understand his Glaswegian that night. My accent is a little bit dull, I'm afraid, somewhat monotone, but hopefully you can grasp my words a little bit easier. Before I go on, I must thank the Guvnors Club for inviting me to give this reply. It's a great honour. I can't wait for John Conway's speech next year. For those of you that don't know me, I travelled south 18 years ago to come and build some exciting things in London. I grew up on a small chimney-lined town in Lancashire. Those of you that recall watching Monty Python's The Meaning of Life will remember there's a section called The Third World, which was filmed 3 cobbled terraces away from where I grew up. My father was a plumber, so from a young age I helped him whilst he moonlighted for extra cash at the weekends. Even today I can still do my own plumbing work, a little bit of work from the chippies and the brickies and the sparkies as well, just to tide me over. My local town had a high proportion of work in men's clubs, so by the time I was 10 years old, my darts, pool, snooker skills were pretty much unrivaled. As a youngster, I was heavily influenced by the skilled working people that I met. It's fair to say that they were proud, tough, working people, and they were predominantly men. As I aged, though, I realised that the term proud and tough is a bit of a character flaw. That makes me flawed too. I've basically picked up the same trait. Recently, for example, I attended a Wellman over 40s clinic at the local NHS drop-in centre. They have to force you to go there, if you know this, because otherwise these proud, tough men wouldn't go. I'm pleased to say, though, I did pass with flying colours, although I do need to lose a stone in weight. Whilst I was there, I did consider asking them to look at the bursitis in my shoulder, the failing cartilage in my knee, the ache in my back, and so on. I mean, you're already there, you're through the door, you don't want to trouble them with another appointment. I guess it's the tough guy trait shining through, although my wife, Anne, she does insist it's mere stupidity. There will be more of my experience of doctor's appointments later, but first I'd like to talk about my wife's Uncle Tom. Now, Tom grew up on a council estate in Wandsworth. He did not excel academically, but he did have a stellar career in the Navy, and then later he worked for the prison service for some time. Tom bought a small farm, he built a barn, he had some livestock, he tended to home affairs whilst working full-time for the prison service. Tom was the same kind of proud man that I was familiar with from my hometown, and I think we got on very well as a result. Now, as you can imagine, his work and his farm kept him physically very busy. And one day, Tom learned that he had some bad pains in his hand that he later learned was a debilitating form of arthritis. It greatly hindered him and affected his mental health. Tom, this proud, tough guy, became physically less able to do what has always been very easy for him. One Sunday, about 10 years ago, Tom took his family for lunch. He complained that he felt tired. He left early. His wife and son stayed for another drink. Later the same day, Tom was found in the barn. He was 57 years old, and he was one of 16 people that would have taken their own life on that day. Now, in the days after Tom's death, I went walking with his brother, my father-in-law, and as we walked, all I could think about was how Tom must have felt such a burden on his family that he couldn't really, he must have thought they were better off without him. Or worse, that the pain in his hands was just simply so unbearable that it severely clouded his judgment. Tom had been unable to talk to his closest family about any of this, and as a result, he'd spiraled into such an unhealthy state of mind that he couldn't really see clearly anymore. Now, at this point in my life, I always thought that when people talked about mental health, they were talking about the people that harbored the worst of thoughts all the time, like Tom did towards the end of his life. I never saw there was a gradual shift and that it doesn't begin with the worst of thoughts and actually an absence of thought. It seemed to me that you did or you didn't feel that way, like a cut or a wound. You had one or you didn't. It didn't occur to me that mental health was the same as good diet, good fitness, prevention being much better than any cure. And this was until something happened to change my mind. On the 2nd of December 2016, on a lovely bright winter's day, my wife Anne gave birth to our second child. I went to work as normal, and I rushed back to be with her. Aidan, my first and only son, was born just after midday, and he died 30 minutes later in his mother's arms. Now, if I privately tell this story, lots of people tell me that it's tragic or horrific, and I don't agree with that. I think it's just incredibly sad. Thinking of it now, it's a bit like reliving a nightmare, so I try not to. Now, there's a mantra we have on a rugby pitch, we go again. And if you're not familiar with the term, it means don't waste your time looking at what is behind you, focus on what's in front of you. And that's what we tried to do. I had a 2-year-old daughter who needed her parents there for her, and I had a distraught and devastated wife who needed a husband to love her. My way of dealing with this was quite simple. You find a mental box, you pack it all inside, and you accept that you'll deal with it when you need to. In short, you be that flawed, proud man from a Lancashire mill town, the one who stays clear from the doctors unless he's forced through the door. But secretly, you just pray you don't have to deal with it, and you make sure you never find a time. And that is what you're supposed to do, isn't it? Now, at this point in my story, it's important that I mention Lend-Lease. I've been through some tough times in my 6 years with the business, and I often forget how big this company is. It's mainly because my friends and colleagues have treated me like I work for a small family-run business. And if I've never told you all before, it's fantastic, and I continue to be amazed by how brilliant you all are. Since Aidan's death, I've found there have been days when I could not go to work. I've lied to my wife about feeling ill, and I've lied to my colleagues about feeling ill. And the truth is, I simply couldn't face it. There have actually been many, many more days when I did come to work and felt the same. And if I'm honest, those days are the hardest. And I'm sure there are people in the room who know what that feels like. And now, when I think of Tom, I know for sure there isn't a mental health on or off switch. Instead, it gradually takes hold of you if you don't unlock the boxes with the things in them that worry you. There isn't a moment where a switch flips and you suddenly have a mental health issue. It's much the same as the stone of weight that I need to lose. This did not appear overnight. By pretending to be proud or tough, I've made my mental health worse, and I know that Anne's Uncle Tom did the same too. The most recent government statistics record that an average of 16 people every day in the UK take their own life. That's 4 women and 12 men, 365 days a year. Most of those people who take their own life are over 30 and below 59. That includes quite a lot of us in this room tonight. The UK construction industry accounts for 7% of all the available labour in this country, but it accounts for 13% of all in-work suicides. And there's a belief it has a lot to do with this proud, tough guy image that our industry promotes, especially for those working a long way from home or with poor job security. Those of you who attended the Governor's Ball will recall that we all watched a video commissioned by a charity. Steve, Saving Men from Suicide, tried to tackle some of these issues face on, and I think it's amazing that as governors we helped them raise £10,000 so far. Lend-Lease supports mental health too. In the past 2 years, over 400 people have attended our mental health first aid, and currently we have over 150 active mental health first aiders. And well done to all the people who have the courage to put their hands up and offer that support. I have no doubt it benefits many individuals. With this in mind, and before I go back to my doctor's appointment, I'd like to propose a toast to all those who've attended mental health first aid, to Lend-Lease and to the Governors for promoting such important issues. Cheers. Thank you. Now back to the doctors. I have a story about my biggest fear. Recently, I woke with a headache that hung around for days. Half a pack of Nurofen wouldn't make it go away. I knew that something caused it. It made me feel unblessed. It wasn't too much alcohol. It was simply too much stress. I rang my estranged doctor with a thirst to get it fixed. A chat and some prescription drugs would surely do the trick. I walked to my appointment and waited and joined the queue. I waited, watched and read until the next name called was Stu. I wandered to the doctor's room. He checked me up and down. Then he peered over his glasses and he asked me with a frown, "Are you worried your blood pressure might be up again? Is your hand-arm vibration a cause of constant pain? Are you being bothered by your bulging lumbar disc, your slowly failing eyesight, or that subcutaneous cyst? Your rheumatoid arthritis, those ulcers on your tongue, your kidney stones, your genital warts, the red spots on your bum, your low sperm count, your dodgy knee, the dermatitis on your hand, the grapes hanging from your anus, or the grotesquely swollen gland?" "No," I said, "I'm worried." "Oh, sorry. Well, surely then you're worried about your need for constant care." "No," I said, "I'm worried that my daughter's a surveyor." She's short on common sense, and her thighs and arms are wee. She cries when she sees scaffolders, and she does not make the tea. She cannot count, nor draw too well, and often she's quite lippy. She'd sooner hang out with her mum than drink beer with a brickie. She washes almost every day, and she will not shave her head. And every night by 8 o'clock, moisturises before bed. I've never seen her grow a beard. Bum fluff is all she's got. And as for cranes and concrete, well, she does not give a jot. Her soft hands lack all calluses. I've never seen her sweat. She'd rather learn to count than work outdoors when it's wet. She's never downed a pint. No idea when it's her round. She whinges, whines, complains. She thinks Campbell Rowe's a clown. She cannot use a theodolite. She would poorly buy most scope. Never talks about an underspend, never puts a cost on hope. To her, life is one big pissing contest that goes on and on and on. She has a grasp of simple English, but her Polish knowledge, none. Engineering is not her specialism. She prefers smaller calculations. Yesterday, I caught her counting beans, the epitome of all frustrations. She gets a free ride everywhere and is grossly overpaid. I never see her after lunch. She's work shy, I'm afraid. We have to call her princess. Now, that's not a gender-specific reference. It's just she lives in this world of fantasy where ignoring me is her preference. Someday, I hope for common ground and a shared appreciation, but she often throws her toys around, which isn't great preparation. As I described my nightmares, my doctor simply smiled. I said, "You don't understand. She is my only child. I tell you, doctor, I'm worried that I cannot take much more. But unlike surveyors, she does have an excuse. My dearest Evie, she's only 4. Thank you very much.
There you are. Oh, well, I was going to announce that, and you've just done it. Okay. It's so funny. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was just about to ask the chairman to come back to the stage to present his trophy, but we've done that already. It works well. Once again, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, governors and guests, the raffle envelopes are now going to be collected. So if you can raise them aloft, all the committee members will come around the room and collect them as we now serve you a dessert.